On the morning of June 15, 1904, a chartered steamboat caught fire on the East River in New York City, carrying 1,300 passengers, almost all women and children from one church congregation. In under an hour, more than 1,000 of them were dead. It remains the deadliest single-day disaster in New York City's history before September 11, 2001. And almost no one's heard of it. This is the story of the General Slocum, a disaster so complete it erased an immigrant neighborhood from Manhattan, and so forgotten it's been overshadowed by a far more famous shipwreck 8 years later. The General Slocum was a wooden-hulled paddle steamer, chartered for years by churches, schools, and clubs for trips up the rivers and into Long Island Sound. On paper, she was safe. Inspectors had certified her fire and life-saving gear. In practice, none of it worked. Rotted hoses that burst under pressure, lifeboats painted into place so long they couldn't launch, and decade-old life preservers stuffed with cheap filler instead of buoyant cork. The crew had never once practiced fighting a fire. Every requirement checked off on paper, none of the substance behind it. That same morning, St. Mark's Evangelical Lutheran Church, a German immigrant congregation from the Lower East Side in a neighborhood known as Little Germany, chartered the Slocum for its annual Sunday school picnic. More than 1,300 people came aboard, dressed in their finest picnic baskets in hand, most of them women and children escaping the tenements for a rare day off. As the ship steamed up the East River, fire broke out below deck in a storeroom of flammable straw and oil-soaked rags, likely set off by a dropped match or cigarette. Rather than turning for the riverbank just yards away, Captain William Van Schaik held speed and steered for North Brother Island over a mile upriver, driving it into the wind, fanning the flames the entire way. What followed was a complete collapse of every safety system aboard. Crew grabbed the fire hoses and watched them burst apart, then tried the lifeboats and found them wired solidly to the deck. Panicked mothers strapped life preservers onto their children and threw them into the river, only to watch them sink. Crowded decks began to collapse, and heavy, soaked wool clothing pulled still more people under. By the time the wreck grounded near North Brother Island, an estimated 1,021 of the 1,342 aboard were dead, most women and children from a single church, lost within less than an hour. The investigation exposed how hollow the safety record had been. Fire drills never held, hoses never tested, life preservers never opened and checked. President Theodore Roosevelt fired the inspectors who'd signed off on the ship. Of 8 people indicted, only 1 was convicted. Captain Van Schaik, guilty of criminal negligence, not for the rotten hoses or useless preservers, but narrowly for skipping fire drills. He served only a few years before being paroled, then pardoned by President Taft in 1912. No company official ever faced a consequence. The one lasting legacy was regulatory. Congress forced the Steamboat Inspection Service to actually test life-saving and firefighting equipment, not just take an owner's word for it. For the neighborhood the Slocum sailed from, there was no real recovery. So many mothers and children gone that Little Germany emptied out within a few years, its survivors scattering uptown. The General Slocum wasn't sunk by a storm, an enemy, or bad luck. It was sunk by safety equipment that existed only on paper, thorough enough to scatter the very community that might have kept its memory alive. If you want more stories like this one, The Disasters History Forgot, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.